I did not know what to expect when I signed up for this. I have to be honest.
Fair call.
But it's been way more fun than I expected. You guys make philosophy fun, and I think we need more of this. Philosophy should not be calculus with words. It should be fun, and it should be rewarding. So not financially rewarding, as we found out, but it should be rewarding in life. So thank you, guys. This was terrific.
You're listening to The Occupational Philosophers with Simon Banks and John Rice.
Hello and welcome to The Occupational Philosophers, a not-so-serious business podcast that comes to you each and every week, mashing up the worlds of creativity, curiosity, and a healthy dash of philosophy thrown in. As always, I'm joined by my co-host in the UK, John Rice. Good morning, John. What's caught your curious eye this week?
Hi, Simon. What's caught my curious eye is the fact that the Royal Academy has a new show in London, which is bringing together the three Renaissance masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. When they weren't being masters or Ninja Mutant Turtles, the article I was reading was about how they first crossed paths in Florence back in the early 16th century. And it was this idea that they're being together in that melting pot of Florence at the time created a lot of rivalry and influences between the artists, which was really interesting to read. Leonardo da Vinci, he was the elder, as it were, painter, engineer, multidisciplinary explorer, science and philosophy. Michelangelo was the brash, truculent, and already sporting the famous boxer's nose, which he smashed in a fight with a rival sculptor. Young unknown, as it were, at the time. It just goes to Michelangelo wanted to tear Leonardo down, but the more peaceful Raphael just wanted to learn from him. So I was quite interested in that whole thing of how that coming together was a place of curiosity and learning. We know that Leonardo's paintings were, as it says here, full of poetic blurrings, but he was a hard-nosed empiricist who described himself as a disciple of experience. So it was that blending of scientific research and sharpness compared to the softer, poetic, romantic paintings that he created. Lovely piece from Michelangelo in the article, which is that architecture is about enclosing space, sculpture is about excavating it, which I thought was a lovely sentiment there, which was how Michelangelo had redefined the city of Rome, but also redefined the way space itself should function. And then finally, and this brings us to the piece that I really wanted to mention, is Raphael, of course, famously painted the School of Athens, which, as we all know, and all of our listeners will know, is the source of the artwork for this very show and shows both Plato and Aristotle as they're walking through a grand Roman architectural space. And as you know, Simon, you're Plato in the artwork and I'm Aristotle. And Plato is depicted as old, grey and barefoot. By contrast, Aristotle is vigorous, slightly ahead of him, a mature manhood wearing sandals and gold-trimmed robes, with the youths all looking his way. And I thought, there we go. You got it right when you actually decided to be Plato to my Aristotle. So tied it up for me. I read the story and it came full circle back to this show. So that's what's caught my curious eye this week. Simon, how about you?
Really, it's just about a little jab at the end, that whole story. But I see what you've done there. Now, what's caught my eye, I've dived back into the world of thunks. One of our previous guests, Ian Gilbert, thunk is that question where there is not an immediate answer. And the reason being, I was thinking around, how do you exist in that grey space in between right and wrong or your firm beliefs or this is the way I look at the world? So some of the thunks that caught my eye. If you paint over a window, is it still a window? If a zebra lost its stripes, what colour would it be? And also, what colour is Tuesday? I just love these these answers where you sit in the middle. And I think it's a really nice way to think how we might just navigate some of those, just navigate the way we look at the world, understanding there is no perfect answer.
Did have the answers was yes, white and blue. Is that not?
Yeah. I did this with my wife and she said exactly that. No, that's right. There's no. She goes, that's easy. Yeah. So I just like that idea of thunks and how do we sit in between those spaces where there are multiple answers just depending on where you come at things in the world. Now, John.
Yes.
We have a guest on this week. Very exciting. Who is the curious cat we have on this week?
I'm genuinely excited. Simon, our guest today, is an award-winning journalist, a New York Times best-selling author, a much sought-after keynote speaker, many topics including happiness, innovation, the power of place, which is interesting, and he regularly leads writing workshops around the world, including one which came through in my inbox today to Bhutan. So it's perfect timing. He's a former foreign correspondent for NPR and a reporter for the New York Times, reporting from more than 30 nations from Iraq to Indonesia and covering some of the major international events of recent times, and is the recipient of several journalism awards, including the Angel Award for coverage of Islamic affairs in Asia. His works appeared in the Washington Post, New York Times, the Atlantic, National Geographic, among other publications. His books, which I am reading two in parallel, The Geography of Bliss, The Geography of Genius, Man Seeks God, The Socrates Express, and his latest book, Ben and Me, which has just been published a few months ago. Please say hello to my favourite author of the year and moment, Eric Weiner. Hello, Eric.
Hello, Eric. Welcome.
Hello, John and Simon. From what I've heard so far, I can already tell this is my kind of podcast. When you ask what color is Tuesday, I'm being serious. Those are the things I ponder. And
well, do you disagree with blue, Eric? I mean, if you've got another answer.
Well, blue's my favorite color. And very interesting question about the window. If it's painted over, is it still a window? Because we define things by their function. So is it the original intention of the window that means it'll always be a window, even if it's shattered or painted over? Or does it lose its windowness when you can't see through it anymore?
This is going to be good, Simon.
Yeah. We could spend the next hour debating that.
I'm very much in my happy place. Can we go for 2 hours rather than just a one?
Another one I liked there was Can a Baby Commit a Crime? And I thought, they're really good. I'll post a link to those in the show notes. So.
And again, some tributes to Ian Gilbert, who I think was one of the people who did introduce us to those in the first place. And I have a couple of books on the shelf, I think, with regards to those. So yes, thank you. Eric, welcome. What's caught your eye this week?
It's actually something out of this world. NASA has recently launched an unmanned mission to Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter. And there is some evidence of a liquid ocean beneath that moon's icy crust. And where there is water, there might be life. And it just happens by coincidence that the chief scientist for this project, a man named Robert Pappalardo, is my cousin. And so I've known for years that his whole career has been just waiting to get the funding to launch this probe. And I saw him quoted actually in my local paper, the Washington Post. At the launch site, he was talking to fellow scientists and workers. I'll just read, it's not very long, I'll read what he said. For most of human existence, neither children nor elders or philosophers could imagine a moment like this. There was no place beyond the earth, air, the fire, the water, except for the ether, the quintessence, the industrious machinery of the celestial spheres, heaven. Soon our craft will be there, which I think is just beautiful, even if it's slightly exaggerated with the soon part, because I looked it up. It'll be 2030, the year 2030, before the craft arrives there. And I'm thinking, more waiting. He's waited decades for this mission, and we live in a world where people don't want to wait for their coffee to brew or for their fast food, and got to wait at least 5-6 more years to get for the ship to arrive and the data to come back. So
hope he's not near retirement. Yeah.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind, Eric, as you were saying that, is not dissimilar to me and the UK rail network at the moment in terms of having to exercise some patience. But
yeah, so like the next train to Victoria Station will be arriving in 2030, if you're lucky.
But that's, I just have to say, no, it's fantastic. I mean, how long has he been waiting? How long has that program been waiting?
It's been
to
decades,
secure
literally
funding?
decades. Yeah, to get the funding, then they have to build the craft and plan the mission. So it's his whole career. And I did think also philosophically, I mean, I don't want to jinx it. Thank God it launched successfully. Can you imagine putting everything into it and there's something goes wrong at the launch, or they forgot to turn the batteries on or something? You hear stories like this, but to have put 3 or 4 years into each of my books, and that's a big commitment. But this is your whole career, your whole life's work into this one very important, very exciting mission.
You must have the most interesting conversations at Christmas time when everyone's around the dinner table with a
Yes.
NASA scientist in the room.
Right. Sometimes we'll say, well, it's not rocket science, is it, Bob? He's like, well, actually, it is rocket science. Okay, well, it's not brain surgery then. No, it's not.
No,
But
they couldn't make it this Christmas.
so
I'm passing the turkey at a velocity of 3.4 air miles per second. It's going to be landing
he's actually
soon.
an astrobiologist is his training, which I think is just an interesting profession because we have not found life on other planets. So you're a biologist in waiting. In a way, you're a hopeful biologist that, in fact, we will find life out there somewhere. And maybe it'll be on Europa, and my cousin will win the Nobel Prize, and I'll say I know him.
And I love that. I'm a hopeful biologist. So.
Yes.
Well, now we're 3
Okay.
degrees away from him as well now, Eric, because we know you. We'll ride on his coattails through your coattails.
There'll be, if he finds life on Europa, then the coattails will be very long and room for everyone.
Room for all. Now, Eric, we have listeners from all over the world. Where are you in the world and what can you see out your window?
I am in the little town, it's not so little actually, of Silver Spring, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., very close to the city line. I'm afraid the view out my window is just kind of boring. It's trees and houses. My cat spotted a rabbit in the yard the other day, and that's caused endless fascination. If I crane my neck a little, I can see construction for a light rail that will be finished about the time the Europa craft arrives on that planet. It amazes me how these things are constantly delayed and so disruptive. And I guess they're banking on the fact that when the train line is eventually completed, you'll forget about the disruption.
Will that make life easier for you when it's constructed, Eric? Is that?
In theory, yes. My running joke is there's another town called Bethesda, Maryland, about 2 miles from here, and the train line's going to take you there. I said, yeah, put on Google Maps, how do I get from my town to Bethesda, Maryland? It said, walk 100 meters, wait 7 miles for 7 years for the purple line to be completed, board the purple line, disembark in Bethesda. Yeah. So that's what I see outside my window.
Now, you do so many things. I'm just wondering if you sort of put yourself in the middle of 3 or 4 of those things, what are those intersections or the crossovers of your interests and work life?
That's a good question. When asked to describe myself, I call myself a philosophical traveler or a traveling philosopher. I would say one of my main interests is the power of place. And there's this fairly obscure but quite fascinating academic field called place studies, which is more than geography. It's geography, but it's also philosophy and psychology and architecture and much more. So I firmly believe that place affects us in ways we're not aware of even and especially, in fact, in the digital age. So that's one area. The other is obviously philosophy, the big questions. I've written 5 books and not one has been on a small subject. I keep trying to write like a small book. John McPhee, the American writer, wrote an entire 300-page book about the orange. A man named Henry Petrowski wrote a 500-page history of the pencil. I'm thinking, I just want to write something small like that. But instead, I've written about happiness and spirituality and creative genius and wisdom. I would say those are 2 of the big areas, yeah.
And would you add space as a place that you might write about at some point?
I've not been a real space head exceedingly. I find this world is interesting enough. I'm not done with this world yet. The one thing that does appeal to me about space exploration, because I often feel that the subject of one of my most recent book, Benjamin Franklin, he said he wished he was born 100 years later. He could see all the wondrous scientific and technological innovations. See, I feel the opposite. I wish born 100 years earlier, because as a traveling philosopher and as a travel writer, 1920s, between the 2 world wars, that was a time to really explore the world where there were still things to explore. And you could, if you were the first white person to get to Borneo, that's all you needed for a book contract. I went to Borneo and I came back. That was it. Now we have to come up with more clever ideas like the Geography of Bliss and things like that. But yeah, I think I would have liked to have been around 100 years ago.
Is that just on that last thing on place, Eric? Does that includes place as in the buildings we might inhabit or the environment, immediate environment around? Or is it the
Yes.
actual geography, the city we reside in or the
No,
country?
it's the whole thing from the room you're in. Maybe you engage in claustrophilia, which is a term I just discovered, which is the opposite of claustrophobia. It's people who actually enjoy small spaces. So your little town outside of that is the UK, and then across the channel is Europe. And you can look at place from many different perspectives. I mean, it's your immediate surroundings, and then it's also the invisible environment you're in, which would be English culture and then British culture also. I mean, we could talk more about that, but I feel like that is the invisible waters that we all swim in, and we're usually just not aware of them. Like the goldfish is not aware that they're in a fishbowl until you remove them from the fishbowl, and they're looking back and saying, oh, I can't breathe, and I was in water. And so we need to step out of our own little fish bowls and hop into others for at least a while. And the beautiful thing is that when you hop back in your own fish bowl, you see it more clearly. And maybe you've experienced this if you traveled abroad and then come back home and all of a sudden UK or Australia, you're seeing with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I often like to talk around this notion of traveler's eyes. Like when you travel, your mind's on overdrive, and the moment you get wherever you're going, your senses are on overdrive, your mind's on overdrive. And I always think if we can just bring a little bit more of that traveler's eyes back into our daily life, because we travel to see things we can often ignore at home. So it's so nice. How do we bring that sense of curiosity and understanding of place maybe in our local area as well?
Right. And it's not when you travel overseas into strange new places, you are more aware of your surroundings, but you haven't changed. It's just that you're giving yourself permission to really focus on what's around you. And you can try the trick at home to try to really just pretend you're a tourist in Sydney or a town in UK and just really pretend you're there for the first time and walk around like a complete tourist. And it is possible to do. It's harder, which is why I think we travel. And I've written about this. I think travel is really a parlor trick. I don't think we become different people when we travel. We just give ourselves permission to be different people. Henry Miller, the American writer, this is my all-time favorite travel quote. He said, "One's destination is never a place, but a new way of looking at things." And that completely sums up my approach to travel.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to go into my town just across the bridge here and be a tourist. I'm going to ask for directions and see if anybody gives me funny looks.
Yeah, make sure they charge you extra for everything too. Yeah.
What, haggle them upwards?
Yeah, that's it. Not £5, £7 and not a pound less for that. And yeah, and take pictures of everything and take selfies of yourself in front of boring houses and things like that, and go to the local gift shop.
Now, I used to do this with my kids when they were younger. We used to go around and take crayons, and we'd do crayon rubbings on all the things in our little town. So we'd all look at the textures, and all of a sudden you notice signs, you notice things on the footpath. So John, take your crayons, go around, do some texture rubbings, and especially in the UK, there'll be so many plaques and different things. And once you're looking for it, you'll be surprised what you can see.
I shall come back next
really
week
cool.
with my texture rubbings.
Yeah, and the side of a crayon, John, the side of a crayon. So we're going to dive into our dinner party round. And John and I like to think of it. Imagine you go to a dinner party. Sometimes you might be seated next to someone and the questions can be a little bit stilted, like, hello, what do you do? Or something. You go, okay, I do this. And sometimes they feel, maybe not, they don't flow as well. So John and I have always thought, well, what might be some better questions to ask if we sat down with someone we didn't know at a dinner party? So we've arrived. It's a lovely scene. We've got some lovely wines. We'll say we've got some wines from the Napa Valley, a little bit more local, not so local way. Maybe going to pour some of those out. So my first
question. Are there
question,
appetizers too?
Yeah, we've got appetizers. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We've got some
Nice.
quail. We've got some quail, and
nice.
we've
Very
got
nice.
some quail eggs as well. What's not so much UK snack? What's giving you joy at the moment?
Talking to you guys, I would say. Beyond that, being between projects, actually. I've finished one book and I'm not 100% sure yet what the next one will be. So that interstitial space is giving me joy and anxiety, to be honest, but I'm trying to focus on the joy. of being in between. So there's this sense of possibility. I'm very much a possibilian, which is true.
Yeah. Did you call it interstitial space? Did I hear that correctly? Okay. What does that mean? Or is it just the space in between, or is there a little bit more to that?
It is the space in between when you're airing out your brain after one project. And I do feel you need to air out your brain or it will get all musty. We're going to keep coming back to place and space during this conversation because that's the way my mind works. I'm a big fan of the places in between, of airports, for instance, transit terminals. And a lot of people hate them. I love them. I love being just not here, not there. Therefore, there are no expectations on you. I love a long layover. For me, it's free time. It's time without any obligations. So interstitial space, yes.
Interstitial time, Eric, then have something else that you're losing yourself in, a hobby of some description. What helps you clear the mind? Is there something?
I don't have hobbies. I have obsessions instead, which I think maybe are more powerful than hobbies. And I mean, they're a little strange. They're not like call the police strange, but maybe my wife would disagree. So I have an entire trunk filled with notebooks that I've collected from around the world in various places. Lots of leather-bound notebooks, ridiculously expensive notebooks where the paper is made out of stone. It's actually made it's not paper. It's paper, but it's not from trees. It's from stone. I mean, it has a wonderful silky feel, but it's kind of heavy, actually. And I likewise love paper planners, but my big, big obsession is bags, shoulder bags, backpacks, slings are all the rage. You may think I own too many because I own about 54 at last count, but who's to say what's too many and what's the line between an obsession and a collection? I collect bags and I just maybe it's because I travel so much, I don't know, but I love when a bag is perfectly designed with not too many pockets, not too few pockets, a place for everything, the right feel in your shoulder, usually a mixture of wax canvas and leather, and a very analog thing that you can carry with you everywhere you go.
So I'm a fan of bags as well, not so much to your extent, but I certainly like to have one that works for me. You're heading out the door. Let's say you're just having a bit of a wander around a new city. Let's say you've arrived in that new city. You're going to go for a wander and you're going to be gone for, 4, 5, 6 hours. What's your bag and what's in that bag?
Am I bringing a laptop or no?
I'm going to say no laptop. Yeah, no laptop.
Okay. Well, I probably would be the tree-size verse, which is a handmade bag out of Belgium with this beautiful wax canvas, and it's got a leather strap, and I'm bringing my leather planner made in Porto in Portugal, and I'm bringing my reading glasses, and I'm bringing not too many books. I'm bringing 2 books. I'm bringing 1 nonfiction, 1 fiction, and I'm bringing one of my many notebooks, which is separate from the planner. The planner's for part of my brain that's organizing my life. The notebooks are for freestyle and just sandboxing ideas, as I call it.
And would this bag hang over your shoulder, or is it a backpack or more of a satchel?
I went through I went through a serious backpack phase, and now I'm back into the satchel phase. And there are convertible bags that can do both, but hybrid things don't really work. And that's true for most things in life. Hybrid work, hybrid cars, hybrid bags that try to be a satchel and a backpack. They usually do neither particularly well, but I think there's something about us humans that we just love that all-in-one. Maybe it's an American thing, I don't know, but the all-in-one, it's a bag, it's a satchel, and it's a backpack. It's a slicer, dicer, it does everything. And
$24.95.
Yeah, hybrid ideas, even hybrid ideas can be problematic. It reveals a kind of a lack of commitment, I think. But we love the idea. I think we'll say, it's the hybrid model. And it feels like, it's a compromise, a wise compromise. Sometimes, maybe, usually it's a cop-out.
2 thoughts come to mind, Eric, as you were saying that. One is, it must take you ages to get out the door.
It does. And there's also the problem of, where are my keys? Where's my wallet? Where's my phone? It's another bag. And I don't know which one. Or if I say to my wife, where's my whatever? Have you checked a bag? It must be in a bag. So this is the problem is I lose track of where I put things. But the beautiful thing is, maybe if I won't use a bag for 3 months and I'll open it up and I'll find $50 or something, something I left behind. It's like, oh, it's a present. So there's the positive side to that.
The second thing, Eric, that came to mind is, I think you've got a topic for your next book. You said you wanted something smaller.
Bagman. Yeah.
Bagman.
Well, there is, Simon, there's a website out of Australia. I'm not making this up, called Carryology. And it's basically about the philosophy of carry. And there's sewing bags too, but it's called Carryology. I'm 90% sure it's an Australian production. And they wanted to interview me, actually, when my books came out. I don't know what happened to that. But yeah, there is other people like me out there. So there you go.
I'm interested where this question might go, but I thought it's a good one. What are you curious about right now? Or is there a big question that you are wrestling with?
Yeah, I am curious about narrative truth versus factual truth. And this comes directly out of the elections we had in the US here recently. And the whole question of subjective truth, which is not an oxymoron. I learned this through my research for my book, Geography of Bliss. How do these blissologists, these researchers, how do they measure your happiness? But they don't hook you up to an MRI machine with electrodes or anything like that. They ask you. They would say, John, on a scale of 1 to 10 overall, how happy are you these days? And tell people this. They're like, well, that's entirely subjective. I'm like, yes, it is. Are we supposed to judge John's happiness by looking at him or looking at his life even, or his income or whatever? No, it is subjective. And the same thing with the opposite, with pain. If you went to a doctor and you said, I have this pain, and they did a bunch of tests and said, well, I can't find anything wrong with you. You're not in pain. You don't have pain. That would be a bad doctor, I think. They're not going to question your subjective truth of being in pain. So as much as there's emphasis on facts, and we mock people who say alternative facts, there may not be alternative facts, but there are alternative truths. And I'm increasingly convinced that we humans are not information processing beings. We're story processing beings. The story, the narrative, matters much more than any particular data point. And I think that's what we saw in these elections. A lot of journalists were shouting, but the facts, one candidate, you can guess who it was, is lying, making things up. And more than half the country said either we don't care or whatever, and voted for him because the narrative truth that he was speaking resonated with them. And it's not just semantics. I think this is what I'm curious about and what I'm wrestling with, and this whole notion of subjective truth, which I think we've oddly lost sight of as we obsess about making fact-based decisions all the time. That's just one approach.
And I heard a saying a few years ago at a conference, data proves, but stories move. So it speaks to that piece which you're, I guess, talking a little bit about now, like the data can sometimes just become a bit
I would even say
blah,
stories
blah.
prove as well. I would go further than that. So, yeah, and data never convinced anyone of anything. I mean, go back to Aristotle with, what was it, logos, pathos, ethos. Pathos is what moves people, not logos. And I think it's more, and this is, you said what I'm curious about it because I haven't fully worked it out. I think there's oddly like two things going on right now in different directions. One is people are questioning experts and they're questioning facts and they're questioning science. And I think one reason they're doing that is because subjective truth has been diminished. How you feel, you can't say it's kind of a tired expression, but your lived experience, people feel it's diminished. I think that explains a lot of the election results, is people feel their lived experience was being trumped, if you will, by data about the economy, for instance. But the economy's good. We have all the facts. What's wrong with you? It's the patient who says he's in pain and the doctor who says, no, you're not. We've done all the tests. Well, yeah, not going to work.
There's a whole podcast on that, Eric.
Yes.
we could get back
Let's
to
talk about the orange for an hour.
I was going to say, and this is you in the interstitial time. You should be taking a break.
I know. I need to have more This is why I think I
back to
resort to the trivial bag obsessions, because I'm either thinking very profound thoughts or literally spending hours on eBay looking for a deal on a nice wax canvas survey bag.
It's comforting.
You make some very nice bags in the UK, handmade leather and canvas bags.
Just a final question before we start to wrap up our dinner party. Eric, have you got a favourite cocktail or dinner party fact or a little story that you like to share with guests that kind of brings us a bit of...
Am I allowed two quick facts?
Please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one.
I'll just bring a nightcap over for you.
So say you're talking to someone who announces that they're a vegetarian. Rejoinder, Hitler was a vegetarian, which is true. And I find that shuts down the conversation there. And when people start moaning about it's true. Also a dog lover. So what do you do with that? I mean, he was. And Plato was opposed to democracy. You may know that. He did not trust the mobs. And so we think Hitler all bad and 99.99% bad, but he was a vegetarian. And Plato all good. Well, yeah, but he was opposed to democracy. So you want to make people go, yeah. I don't get invited back to many of these cocktail parties. So, especially with my vegan friends,
Yeah, I was going to say, the vegan
man was
party
so
pooper.
rude.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said to me?
I think he just called me Hitler. Pass the tofu. Pass the tofu.
Now, this next segment is about just going into a little bit more about your work, the themes you touch on. You mentioned place and travel and philosophy as being some elements that come into that Venn diagram, as it were. So the first question is, it seems to be embracing curiosity struck me as a theme that runs through a lot of what you do and what you write about. And I wondered how that curiosity has differed or evolved in your experience, both as a journalist, first and foremost, and then latterly then as an author.
So for a large part of my career, I was a journalist. I was a foreign correspondent for most of it. And I made a pretty radical break about 15 years ago, and I have not looked back. I was living in India, Tokyo, other places, and I had almost the best job in the world, but it was I just felt something was missing. And I realized that every war I covered started to feel like every other war. And I also realized that I was, as most journalists do, focused on the negative. Bad news is a very cynical expression journalists have. If it bleeds, it leads. And it's largely true. And so I had this idea, went to my editor. I said, I want to take a year off and just travel the world looking for the happiest places and what they can teach us. And he said, I believe he said, what have you been smoking? And this was 15 years ago, before it was legal in many parts of the world to smoke such things. So I said, I'm going to write a book. And I fell naturally into long-form narrative nonfiction, creative nonfiction. And I just found it incredibly liberating for a number of reasons. Number one is I could spend a lot more time on a subject. Instead of a day or a week or even a month, I could spend years diving into a subject like happiness or spirituality or philosophical wisdom. I could be personal. I could say things like Simon, or I don't like Simon. I mean, I do like Simon, but I can give my opinion about that. I could be funny. And I stopped using the term interview. In fact, to this day, I never say I'm going to interview someone. I say I'm going to talk to them, have a conversation. And that's a fundamental difference. It's journalists by necessity, their interviews are often transactional. You're interviewing a politician, you want the soundbite from them, they want something from you to get their idea out there in the world. The people I meet and the ideas I wrestle with, it's different. It's fundamentally different.
Eric, I think I read somewhere journalism as being observe but don't participate. And then in the move to the writing that you did, it was fully immersing yourself in experiences and the like, and developing an empathy on a different level, maybe. Is that be true?
Yes, and also
it allowed you to walk towards stuff. And
yeah, it is being a participant observer, as I guess the anthropologists call it. It's also a willingness to be vulnerable. I mean, I have, one friend says I'm writing a memoir just in 5 parts because there's a little bit of each of me in each book, and I don't dole it all out at once. But I think there's truth to that. And also, I have been open in my writing about my struggle with anxiety and with depression, which has been a lifelong struggle. And that's one of the most satisfying aspects of my writing life now is when I write about that, and I write about it openly and often with humor. When I go to a book reading, people will often come up to me and say, I too have depression or I have panic attacks. And thank you for writing about it. And this is, I think, the magic power that, what do they call it? Your superpower. That's it. The superpower of a writer is when you can take a negative experience or a negative aspect of your life, and by writing about it, you transform it into something positive. It's a kind of verbal alchemy, and I find that extremely gratifying.
Now I'm going to jump in. Well, we sort of spoke a little bit about this before around this notion of place and travel and how they intersect. But how do they play into creativity, which is one of the key themes of our show? And can you tell us what have been some of those key insights there as well?
Oh boy. Well, I read a whole book on that called The Geography of Genius, trying to figure out why, if you plot the appearance of geniuses throughout history and around the world, they do not appear just randomly. One in Sydney, one in London, 3 in La Paz, Bolivia. You see these clusters of them, genius clusters, I call them. You were talking about Renaissance Florence earlier. That was one of them. Athens in 450 BC, but also Edinburgh in the Scottish Enlightenment and Hangzhou, China in the 13th century. And they all have a few things in common. One of them is that they are at crossroads. Vienna, 1900, crossroads for immigration from people from different cultures. It's mixing up the pot because you're being introduced to new and alien ideas. In fact, immigrants are more likely to be a genius than non-immigrants. In the U.S., fully 25% of all Nobel Prizes awarded to Americans are to people who were not born in America, who came to this country. So there's something about that experience of being an immigrant that I think opens you up possibilities. And another obvious thing that almost all of them have in common, with one possible exception, Silicon Valley, almost all of them, these genius clusters are urban. They're cities. And we can talk about why that is, but briefly, you're increasing the number of interaction opportunities in a city. If you think of a container with molecules bouncing off each other and forming new compounds, the more molecules you have moving at a high rate of speed in a relatively small space, the more interaction opportunities you're going to have. So I think there's a huge relationship between place and creative genius. And still today, I mean, even though people are saying, oh, you can be anywhere, we live in a placeless society, the people telling us this tend to live in one place, which is Silicon Valley still.
Yeah.
And the efforts to expand Silicon Valley and create a new one have pretty much all failed.
I used to think when I lived in central London for a long time, and we lived in a very sort of, I'd say, eclectic but very cool, hip suburb with not a lot of through traffic. So as such, a lot of people on foot. And I always used to think I'd head out the door and just adventure would await. Like there was always something interesting to bump into. So is it maybe that sort of line a little bit of that sort of idea of just great things happen and those molecules poke into each other?
Provided you have the right attitude, because the one personality trait that psychologists have identified as most important for creative thinking and creative outcomes is openness to experience. Very simple. You have to be open to experience. And there are more experiences to be had in a city, and you have to be open to them. You can be a small-minded person living in a city who doesn't do anything creative. That's possible. But an open-minded person in a city, I think, is going to be more creative than perhaps an open-minded person in the middle of nowhere.
Coming back to as you mentioned, the Renaissance as being one of those classic moments where there was a melting pot and everything. Did you similarly see the same idea of it created conflict, or people were competing as well as being influenced by each other? Was that a common
and in
theme?
fact, the Renaissance is said to have begun with a competition to build the Duomo, the famous Duomo in Florence. I'm forgetting that the names are escaping me, but 2 artists were competing, and they were competing fiercely. And out of that competition grew a kind of flourishing. But it was kind of a constructive competition, not destructive. They were bettering each other, not besting each other, if you know what I mean.
Just now switching to the subject of your most recent book, Benjamin Franklin. And I'm just going to ask this. Is he the ultimate poster boy as someone who personified curiosity, creativity, imagination, and play, which are all core ideas at the heart of this podcast? Because from what I've read so far, it's pretty amazing. What he did and
in
who
a
he
word,
was.
yes, he is. And
Yeah.
Elon Musk certainly thinks so. Elon Musk has gone on the record saying Benjamin Franklin is his hero and his role model. Yeah, Franklin absolutely fits that bill. And he was, oh my God, I would take me an hour to list everything he did from, postmaster, printer, publisher, diplomat, influencer. I think he was the world's first influencer as well. And traveler, he was a tremendous traveler. But why? What did he have? What one historian calls an empirical temper. And I love that phrase, empirical temper. It means that basically, I think he brought the whole scientific mindset of testing hypotheses to everything in life, to the world of morality and virtue also. And so he was both self-confident, he definitely was not shy about that, but he also had extreme intellectual flexibility at the same time, which is a rare combination. Usually people who are very sure of themselves don't have that kind of flexibility. But he changed his mind as he aged. He lived until age 84, which was a particularly long time back then. And in his 70s and 80s, he changed his mind about the British Empire, kind of gave it a thumbs down at age 69. And he changed his mind about slavery also when he was quite older. So he had that openness to experience that I was talking about, and he kept it right until the end.
And the word that we had in there as well was playful, wasn't he? I mean, one of the things I'm reading is how that mischievous might be one description of it, but he was playful in
He's been called the founding father. He's been called the founding father who winks at us. So he always had this. He was sly, and he would impersonate, or he had dozens and dozens of pseudonyms. I mean, he wrote as a middle-aged widow in Boston when he was a 16-year-old teenager. He wrote as the King of Prussia. He wrote as slaved African-American. I mean, he could wear these masks, and I don't think he was a phony. I think he was what the British philosopher Alan Watts called a genuine fake. He just fully embodied and imbibed and owned these personas for a while at least. And he found them a useful way to get his ideas into the world when maybe people wouldn't listen to, a 16-year-old upstart from Boston, but they would listen to a middle-aged widow named Silence Dogood. So the playfulness was also useful.
And would he embrace technology if he was here now?
Oh, definitely.
Eric? Would he be, I say tweeting, but obviously it's Xing now.
He would probably be Xing. Like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they cannot picture them like in a coffee shop with a MacBook Air and noise-canceling headphones. But I can picture Franklin there, and I can picture him inventing noise-canceling headphones. But I will add that he was not a technological fetishist, some people you see in Silicon Valley. His objective was betterment of society, right? I mean, this is a man who, from age 23, began each day by writing down a question, what good shall I do today? And ended each day with another question, what good have I done today? So I think he was first and foremost a social entrepreneur, and then technology was a means to it. I think oftentimes we get this backwards now, and some new gizmo, some app or whatever comes out of Silicon Valley and, let's find some use for it. That was not Franklin's approach. And so I think he would disapprove of technology for technology's sake that we see happening a lot today, I think.
And in the back of my head, I'm thinking of Ben Franklin's Instagram reels as well, what they might look like just in embracing a more modern way of engaging.
He would have fun with it. He would definitely have fun with it.
So
Look what I've invented today.
Yes.
Yeah, check this out. Wink, wink. So I'd love to know, we're speaking about creativity and I guess also how Benjamin Franklin approached it to some extent. But what's your own process? Because these books don't come from nowhere, if that's say it. So do you have like rituals or habits or routines that you observe or don't?
Right.
What does that
Well,
look
one
like?
very simple habit is AI. It writes all my books, in fact. So it's pretty easy. I just push a button, Simon, and it comes out. And then I spend the rest of the day fondling my bag. It's really very simple. No,
So I've got 50. Yeah.
right, exactly. A couple things. Number one, in all seriousness, mornings are important. And I'm naturally a morning person, but I've made myself one. And there is that golden hour of 5 to 6 a.m., 6 to 7 a.m., when the world is still sleeping, at least your immediate world. What they're doing in Australia, I don't know. I don't care. But my world is sleeping, and that is a good time to write, I use a program called the Freedom Program, which blocks me from the internet for a set amount of time, anywhere from 15 minutes to 8 hours, and I write. And I have another technique I use called the Pomodoro technique. Are you familiar with it? Aha. I had a
Yeah.
feeling you might be Pomodoro people. I've become a big believer in that, where this is where you set a block of time, usually 25, 27 minutes, and you set the timer and you focus on one task during the 27 minutes. You don't interrupt it to check your Facebook feed or even to get a cup of coffee or go to the loo. It's focused time, and then you reward yourself with a break and some coffee and a donut. And I find, as someone who's self-employed, I have a lot of unstructured time. So my big challenge is structuring the time, and which really means structuring your energy, your creative energy, and not having it just be so diffuse that it's just going off in a million directions. So you're sort of checking your email and sort of working on chapter 4 of your new book and researching chapter 6 and sort of, it keeps coming back to bags, looking at a bag on eBay. So you're focused on one thing, but not for 4 hours. You can't do that. You can do it for 25 to 27 minutes. And finally, another technique I use when I'm writing is one I invented called sandboxing, which is I will take a chapter I'm struggling with, and I'll give it a new, copy it and give it a new name. Say chapter 3 is about Athens. I'll call it Athens Sandbox. And then I write at the top in big letters, this does not count. And then I play. Anything goes. And I keep the other adult file, but I see what comes out of the children's sandboxing. And usually 1 or 2 ideas will migrate over to the adult file.
I really like that. So it's almost giving yourself freedom to play, liberating structures, you might call it.
Yes, while also keeping the adult structure too. Like you don't throw that away. It's when I'm stuck, when I feel like I just a bit stale, I'm not saying anything fresh. You just totally let yourself go. It doesn't count. You're playing. And not everything comes out of play. So you have to be willing to, quote unquote, waste a Pomodoro or 2.
Last question around this, Eric, to it a few times, and how does place factor into your creative process? Do you go somewhere for certain aspects of what you're doing?
I cannot work at home very well. I am a coffee shop person, especially in the beginning of a project. When I'm editing, then I have a sort of shared writer space I go to, and it's quiet, and I got the pages in front of me. But in the sort of generative process of getting the words on the page, I need to have that background hum. There are researchers who looked into this and found that the ideal decibel level for creative thinking is not complete silence, as you might think, and it's not a very noisy environment. It's about 70 decibels, which is the decibel level of a pretty busy, active coffee shop. And I like that. I got 2 or 3 and I move around, circulate. If I'm stuck, I'll go to another one.
Excellent.
And that was going to be my question, John. So I'm glad you asked it, because and I often find for myself, again, I've written 1 book. I'm working on the revised version of that as we speak. But I did pretty much the whole thing, exactly what you did it very early at home, like in that 5:30 to 6:30. And then everything else was in a coffee shop. Yeah, just to get that sort of sea of stimulus moving in, people walking by, different conversations, laughing, and that sort of just feeds that.
Yeah, I think coffee shops, they used to be places of conversation, and now they're mostly what I call adult parallel play, where everyone's on their laptop doing their thing. But I know there are other writers in the coffee shop I go to, and I see them struggling, and we'll nod to each other every now and then.
And would movement ever be something for you, Eric? Will you go for a walk? Will you do a Jean-Jacques Rousseau and go to do a trek somewhere?
Yes. And I've written about the connection between creativity and walking. You're totally right about Rousseau. He was a big walker. Yes, I will. I probably should do that more. I have to remind myself of what I discovered in my research, that yes, walking is good for you and it's not a waste of time. It can be walking, it can be taking a shower, it can be going to the gym, just something. I think walking is sort of the ideal activity that requires just enough brain power you have to focus on it so you don't fall on your face, but still frees up enough of the creative mind. So I probably should walk more. Thank you for that.
This is time now for a thought experiment. And as someone so well versed in the teachings of philosophers, we know you're familiar with the idea of thought experiments. Plato's cave, Brain the vat, and of course, Wittgenstein's beetles. They're all the means of exploring profound ideas to expand our understanding of the world. However, on this podcast, our thought experiments are more akin to a 1970s game show, but without any prizes. So with that in mind, today's thought experiment is called Your Place or Mind. So we know you love both travel and the great minds of philosophy. So this thought experiment is called Your Place or Mine, and what you have to do is combine both the name of the place and the philosopher into an answer. So we'll give you a point if you recognise the philosopher being described. We'll give you a point if you recognise the place being described. And if you combine them into a lovely portmanteau type answer, we'll give you a third point. So there's a lot of points here to play for.
And a lot of pressure, I might add, too.
I'm going to start with an easy one to get you going. You'll get into the flow. So this first one, here we go. A city of refined thought and reason, combining French elegance, was loved by this Greek philosopher who wrote on logic, metaphysics, ethics, and taught Alexander the Great.
Oh,
point for
this
place.
should be easy. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, certainly. So the city, a place of refined thought and reason, combining French elegance. It was loved by this Greek philosopher who wrote on logic, metaphysics, and taught Alexander the Great. Can you name the philosopher and the place and put them together?
Okay. Athanassal.
Oh, very close.
It could have been good. Think of French.
I thought Aristotle, French.
Aristotle's correct. Yeah.
Aristotle, but he.
And the French capital.
Yes, Paris. I got that.
Put those together.
Oh, Aristotle. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought the philosopher had to be from that city. No, they're separate.
We're not that clever.
Okay.
That would require months of planning.
So, although we seem like we're highbrow,
Okay.
we're actually we're very, very.
That's what was
bargain
confusing me. I'm thinking, I don't think Aristotle ever went to Paris, but he keeps saying French. So the answer is Aristotle.
Aristotle. Hurrah!
Yes,
We're off and running.
okay.
That's
all right,
fantastic.
now let's keep going. Now I've got it.
Okay, now you're
all right.
into it. So there's a little bit of artistic license in these descriptions, Eric.
Do you have an artistic license? Is it expired? Or-
No.
Can I see it, please?
No, it's
Very
just
much
renewed-
expired and
just
unlikely to
renewed
be
last
renewed.
week. It's been renewed last week, I'd like to think. So our next
was it?
one.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So a city with one of the most recognizable buildings in the world, with its distinctive sail-like design, sitting on the edge of its harbour and hosting a range of performances from opera to theatre and dance. And a favourite spot for this German philosopher who returned for his holidays again and again and again for eternity.
Sid Nietzsche.
Oh, that is it.
Yes. Boom. 3 points straight off the bat.
All right. Okay,
This-
let's keep going. This is
My
fun.
mind
This
is blown.
I
Okay.
mean, that's the strongest start we've had since Barack Obama,
Okay.
so that's
Okay.
good going. Okay, so this next one here is this German philosopher whose critique of pure reason transformed modern philosophy with ideas on epistemology and ethics could often be seen at this historic Guatemalan city, famous for its preserved Spanish Baroque architecture and surrounding volcanoes.
Guatemalan
Who's-
City.
The other one, the one that's not the capital.
Anticant?
Careful.
I don't know.
Eman-
A combination of Antigua and...
Emmanuel Cantigua.
Yeah, Cantigua. Okay. I thought Anticant would work too, but this is a family broadcast.
No,
Yeah.
we'll pay
That's
that.
it.
We'll pay that.
We'll have
pay
to.
that.
We'll have to put
Okay.
explicit when the
Okay.
show goes
It's the
out.
first
Boy, this is
warning
tricky.
we've had on this show.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Right, here we go. So,
next one.
no, Simon, next one for you.
We've got one
Can
more.
you tell me
Okay.
the city? I'm going to throw it right back at you. Tell me the city where Immanuel Kant lived and never left in his whole life.
Is it somewhere in Austria?
No. It's
Okay.
changed countries over the last few centuries. It was
Ooh.
part of Germany. And
I'm
he
gonna say
never
no.
left. He hardly traveled anywhere. All these Königsberg.
Königsberg.
Yes. And
Well, I
while
know there's
most
a nice-
philosophers were big travelers, I don't think he ever more than a few kilometers outside of town.
Oh, a
The
first
only thing I know about
stay-at-home philosopher.
Königsberg was it had a nice Pilsner, but now I know it had Emmanuel.
It's now part of Russia. So there you go. Okay.
All right, our next one.
God.
One of the less well-known Greek philosophers and student of Socrates, famous for his works like The Republic and the Allegory of the Cave, who visited this city to celebrate traditional festivals like the Sakura cherry blossom season and the Sumida River Fireworks Festival.
Tokyo.
That's a better answer than the one we've got.
What do you got?
We had Play Tokyo. Yeah.
Okay. Same idea.
I'm going
But
to
I'm
have
with
to
you.
pay that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
think,
gonna-
John, time for maybe for one more.
Yes, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, we'll go for this last one then. A Scottish philosopher renowned for his empiricism, skepticism, and naturalism, who could regularly be seen enjoying street food with vendors selling tacos, tamales, and quesadillas. And it was also originally the capital of the Aztec Empire.
Yucatan.
Yucatan.
David Hume in the Yucatan. Yucatan.
It's actually, you're on the right, you got the philosopher. It's David Hume, Mexico City.
I think that you crossed your Mexico City with the Yucatan Peninsula, which is a little
I think
further
Yucatan
south.
sounds better, but I think
Yucatan does sound better,
Okay.
actually. So you could have said which is Cancun.
okay.
Is
Do you want
the
one
spot.
more? Do you want one more, Eric? or are you done?
bonus round.
Bonus
Okay.
round. Okay. All right. Simon, do you want to do the last one?
Okay, a Stoic philosopher and writer from ancient Rome who could sometimes be spotted walking the ramparts of this city's Roman fort, called Fort Cardiff, around the 1st century AD. The city grew around this fort and is now famous for rugby, lava bread, and Doctor Who.
Okay, so the city's famous for what?
Rugby, lava bread, and Doctor Who. We'll give you a clue. It's a UK city.
Is it Aurelianburg? No. I'm thinking of Marcus Aurelius in Edinburgh, but no.
It's the Wales capital, or the Welsh capital.
Okay. So is it Marcus
Stoic
Aurelius
philosopher.
or Seneca? It's got to be Seneca then.
Seneca,
Okay.
yep.
So
Seneca.
it's Sin Cardiff.
Yes.
Yes.
Seneca, yes.
Seneca then.
Okay.
My
my-
mind is blown.
I think I
As they
did better. I did better with the philosophers and with UK geography. Confused Edinburgh and Cardiff, which is a tragic mistake to make over there.
Easy mistake to make. So.
Yeah, right.
and that brings us. Oh, there we go. I think you got a very, very solid 16 points there, Eric. We're going to give
What
you
if I
16
won?
points there.
What if I won?
What if you won? Well, I mean,
Well, as
pride.
we said, there are no prizes, but a feeling of mutual joy and
Yes.
elation. Yeah.
You'll probably be able to sort of tweet about this afterwards.
What a
Yeah.
scam.
And look,
What a
hang on, I'm
total
just going to put
scam.
you above the leaderboard, above Obama. Yeah.
Okay.
And you got 15. Yeah.
And that, Eric, is the end of Your Place or Mine.
I like it.
What's one thing you couldn't do without in your life right at this moment?
I'm going to cheat. 2 things: coffee and bags.
Eric, we are continually building the Occupational Philosophers Manifesto. What one thing of all your learning should we add?
The fact that happiness is not enough and it's not the highest ideal, that we actually want lives filled with meaning and grit, and sometimes that overlaps with happiness, but not always.
That's
Now,
too big for the tree.
Okay. Or you could go with place matters. That's the
Okay, all right.
simplistic one. Okay. Place matters.
We have somewhere where we put these on the website, so we've got about 4 to 5 words we can fit in. So place matters, but I love that first and meaning and grit. Now, what book should we be reading right now, aside to any of your own fabulous books?
I would say anything by Yi-Fu Tuan, Tuan, who I think is the great underrated geographer of our time. He writes in a very human way about place. His books include Space and Place and topophilia, which is a word that means, can you figure out what topophilia means?
Topophilia.
What do you think it means?
Is it an
You love
aversion to
topography. No, you
Love of
topography.
place. Love of place.
love of
Topophilia. So I'm a
Topophilia.
topophiliist, but I probably shouldn't advertise that. Sounds weird.
Okay. Sounds a bit dodgy, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be a registered topophiliist in my neighborhood, But anyway,
They'll put you on the place register.
yes. Yi-Fu Tuan, seriously, he's a great thinker and he's an academic, but he writes beautifully, very clearly, and he looks at the world through the prism of place as I do.
Oh, I
Lovely.
love that.
A last question, Eric. Again, obviously we're some years out from this, but imagine you're being brought into your retirement home and the nurse leads you into the lounge. All of the residents are sat there and they look up expectantly as you come in, and the nurse says, "Hello, everyone. Here's Eric. How would you like to be introduced?"
He is a philosophical traveler, even when moving nowhere. And does anyone want to buy a bag? He has some for sale. Because I
That's
have
your
to fund my retirement, right? So that's how they'll introduce me.
I love
No.
that. Now, what are you up to next? I know you said you're in that sort of space in between. Is there any
Interstitial
sort of
space.
Yeah, that's the word. That's the word. So, are there any things on the horizon, or any sort of maybe smaller projects coming up, or what's the next 12
I
months?
have been toying with a new book idea, and it's now moved into more than just toying. And I may be a bit premature, but what the heck? I am fascinated by the concept of thin places, and I want to write a book about thin places. Thin places, it's an old Celtic expression that means that normally the Irish would say heaven and earth are closer than we think, but in thin places, they're a mere 3 millimeters apart, much closer. So these are transcendent places where you feel moved. You often experience awe, and they might be a religious site, a beautiful church or mosque. It might be a natural setting. It might be a wonderful bookstore that really just is your place. It might be, for me, a transit lounge in an airport. And I wrote an article for the New York Times travel section a number of years ago about thin places, and people still write to me about that, and I realize there's more to say. So this is where my head is right now.
I've got so many
Well-
questions there, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to ask any of them. But maybe we'd love to have you back
You know,
sometime.
Simon, they say sometimes the wisest questions are the ones you don't ask. So
Okay,
maybe
well, there you
that's the
go.
case.
Wise old me.
You know,
Well,
it's
now,
like
where
it's
can
the
we-
silence between the notes that some musician I forget's the key to good music is the silence between the notes.
Okay, and I put my hand over my mouth, which is a very hard thing to do. So where can we find you, connect with you, buy your virtual drinks? Where do you hang out in the interwebs?
I used to be on Twitter. Now I'm on X. My website is ericweinerbooks.com, all one word. I'm in the usual places, Instagram, etc. If you want to join me in Bhutan, I have a writing workshop, no experience required. You'll see the country, you'll experience it. That's in late April to early May. Look on my website for that. And I will be in Miami at the Miami Book Fair at the end of this month. So if you want to leave
I'd love to.
cold England for sunny Miami, drop on by. I'll be in New Delhi the end of next month, and then Kathmandu in South Asia. So
Any plans to come back
drop
to
by.
drizzly old London and come see Benjamin Franklin's house again on Craven Street?
Well, you may have some thin places there, so I just may do that. And Ireland's just across the sea.
I would love
so
that. I would love that.
let's have coffee.
It's been a real pleasure, Eric.
yeah, that'd be
I
great.
can't say again how much of a joy it's been to chat with you. As I say, enjoying reading your books. I'm going to shortly be going through, obviously, the back catalogue as well. Yeah, and as and when you do set on this new book around thin places, to echo Simon, absolutely love to catch up with you again. It would be a real delight.
I did not know what to expect when I signed up for this. I have to be honest.
Fair call.
But it's been way more fun than I expected. You guys make philosophy fun, and I think we need more of this. Philosophy should not be like calculus with words. It should be fun, and it should be rewarding. So not financially rewarding, as we found out, but it should be rewarding in life. So thank you, guys. This was terrific.
Hey, Simon, as we always say, what a great show. What a fantastic, lovely, lovely guest with Eric there. I was a little bit starstruck, clearly. I've been reading this gentleman's books, and then suddenly I'm there chatting with him, and it's always a joy and a slightly awestruck moment where you go, it really is. It's Eric Weiner, the chap I've been reading all these months. So I was really over the moon with that. Takeaways for you? I've got a load. Shall we restrict ourselves to three?
We'll restrict ourselves to the power of three. How do you even start to... And I've got such an interest, and I talk around this stuff all the time, like how your environment influences your world. And I guess you and I have lived a lot this way as well. So, yeah, look, some great things here. First one, one's destination is never a place, but a new way of looking at things. So just when you think around that piece around travel, it encourages us to look at the world with a fresh set of eyes. I really like this interstitial space, the space in between. And I think it's that space of being okay with that ambiguity and being open to serendipity, which is a word we like to throw in all the time. But like you can sit, maybe there's less rules in that space in between. So it's being comfortable with, oh, I'm not quite sure I might come out of that. And also I love this one around, creativity is an openness to experience, which ties in again with that piece around being open to what's going around you. And also 25% of the Nobel Prize winners in the US were not born in the US, and they've had that lived experience, which goes through to that. So yeah, look, there's my quick 3. I could talk for another hour around what he spoke about. However, in the interest of brevity. What about you?
Yeah, the thing about the Nobel Prize winners being, a large percentage being immigrants goes to that idea of diversity within that cultural melting pot that you saw in those places that had high levels of creativity, such as Florence, Renaissance in Florence and Silicon Valley, etc., Scottish Enlightenment, all of those. It was the diversity of minds and thoughts coming together that fueled that. I like the fact that it was a lot urban places. And then he described it in terms of a gas in a jar and the way that molecules, if they're all sort of interacting very closely and firing off each other, it was similar to that. The closer you put those particles together, the more likely they are to bump into each other and interact. And so ideas interact in that way, and there's opportunities for creative thinking and problem solving, etc. So organizations are ripe for this, aren't they? They're trying to think of how do we create it so people bump up against each other and interact in ways that aid our collaboration or innovation or the way we solve problems, etc. So I like
even
that
if you think about let's say you have an event, which in those events, because we all spend less time in the office, so they're of more importance now. How do you create those bumping molecules at your event? Like, how do you get the most out of that sort of space? Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, just get a really small room.
Yeah. It's a bit hot.
Talking of rooms, moving to the idea of sandboxing. So boxing. I like that one as well because that was where he played. So he would, as he said, as part of his creative technique, set up something where he would write at the top, "This does not count." And it allowed him to just generate almost just anything that sort of flowed from his consciousness, some of which might be good and end up in the real thing. But it was somewhere that was contained and he could do what he wanted. I thought that was a great idea. Again, you can imagine organizations, and they do, don't they? They set up a sandbox with people having to go into that with the idea of it doesn't matter in here. You can create or think about what you want and we'll see what emerges. And with that, maybe my last thought is he said earlier on about curiosity being a theme that runs through his work, is that was married with a willingness to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we've talked about curiosity married with humility. And I think there's something similar to that, which is can't be curious. And yes, you're willing to sort of open up to the idea that you might not know stuff, that you don't have all the answers. And so you go in curious, but vulnerable to the fact that you are saying, I don't know. So again,
and people connect with a little bit of that vulnerability or that ability to, as he said, with his longer form writing, was just able to bring in a bit more of that vulnerability, and people connect to it and they go, oh yeah, I see a little bit that resonates with me. I can see myself there as well. Thank you for sharing that as well. 'Cause it shows your humanness.
Yes. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? It was the empathy that came through that as well, didn't it? That people connected to. So much more, but we're going to, I think, have to bring ourselves to a close on what's been a great show, great episode, and just a real joy.
If we do say so ourselves, on the world's best podcast by the world's best presenters and the world's best producers.
Yes, with all due humility. Yeah.
All right, John.
Yes.
So
just remind yourselves to leave another review for us, Simon.
Yeah. Thank you. I can't think of any more names though to keep reviewing our podcast or new accounts. But I will do my
S-Banks
best.
3649.
Just after S-Banks 3648. Not related. But they do live in the same town. Now, if you have enjoyed the show, and we always say this, but we would love it if you could tell your friends or maybe even go, yeah, right, that was so enjoyable. I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes, because that's all it is, jump on Spotify or Apple and leave a wee little review for us as well. And as always, John, we like people to each and every day
Check out the website, You forgot
that too. Yeah.
Occupationalphilosophers.com.
Stream
You get in
engine.
touch. Suggest who we might want to get on and have some fun with on a thought experiment. But yes, in the meantime, Simon, we say stay curious, make stuff, have fun, play more, and
Date life.